News, views and interviews with Paul Murray.
I know there is a section of listeners who think that the issue of the state government ban on cage fighting is a minority issue and that we're banging on about it needlessly. I've got to say that it's not being driven by us here on the program. It's actually being driven by listeners who keep raising the issue, not only with us, but raising the issue with politicians as well. It was raised on the program again yesterday by a listener with the Premier Colin Barnett when he joined us. This was part of that exchange.
I think that the cage adds to a sort of almost a gladiator environment, that sort of spectre of watching what can turn into or a perception of a violent contest between two athletes.
So you just don't like the imagery?
It's largely to do with the imagery of having that sort of sport or entertainment into Perth here.
So you wouldn't care if it made it less safe for the fighters?
Oh, I care about safety for the fighters, but I don't. I know, people such as Paul, who's just called in. We'll talk about safety, and I don't discount that, but I don't think that's the real issue. I think it's the image of people fighting in a cage that this government does not support. I know there are mixed views in the community, but I suggest there are also many people out there who don't regard people fighting in a cage as appropriate.
Now, a lot of the interest in this sport has been driven by what's known as, this is in mixed martial arts, has been driven by what's known as the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. It's become pretty much an international phenomenon, and even though many people don't like this sport, and I'm one of them, it has become enormously popular around the world. We were approached yesterday after the grab from the interview with Colin Barnett went pretty well viral and did go around the world because there's a lot of interest in this ban here in Western Australia. We were approached by UFC to talk to them about it. UFC's Director of Operations is Tom Wright, and he joins me now. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Paul. How are you?
Yeah, well, thanks, Tom. Tom, is UFC planning to come to Perth still?
Well, you know what? I can tell you, I personally am coming to Perth. I'm going to be there in about 2-3 weeks, and hopefully I'll have a chance to sit down with your Sports Minister Terry Waldron, and I'd love to have a chance to chat with your Premier Colin Barnett. But in terms of the UFC coming to Perth and having an event, we only hold events in a fenced-in enclosure, like our octagon. So as long as the sport of mixed martial arts is not permitted in that kind of an environment and is only held in a boxing ring, we won't be coming to Perth.
You think that you could probably fill the Perth Arena, don't you, for a UFC event?
Well, we filled the Acer Arena, which is now the Allphones Arena in Sydney, 3 times. We filled similar arenas in Canada, in Toronto, in Montreal, in Vancouver, and in Calgary. That seat anywhere from 18 to 20,000. So I've done some homework on the new Perth Arena. I think it'd be a magnificent venue to host a UFC event.
Why does UFC have to be held within a fenced-in enclosure? It's
all about athlete safety and the official safety and safety of the fans that are there. The challenge I think that we have in any sport is you really want to make sure that it's properly regulated, that the health and safety of athletes, whether they're playing on a football pitch or on a cricket field or on a soccer pitch or in an ice hockey arena or the sport of mixed martial arts, you want to make sure that their athlete safety is first and foremost. The octagon was specifically designed to ensure that the athletes are kept safe. Because boxing is just one of the interdisciplinary combat sports that's involved in boxing. All the action happens when you're on your feet. In mixed martial arts, it can be striking, it can be boxing, but it can also be Muay Thai, it can be wrestling, it can be jiu-jitsu, it can be taekwondo, all sorts of different elements brought into it. And when you add those different elements, you want to make sure that athletes are not going to be thrown through the rings and onto spectators or onto the floor. You want to make sure that the officials aren't suffering those same kinds of incidents. And you also want to make sure that it's a level playing field. The octagon is designed to not give any one competitive advantage to somebody who has a different strength in a combat sport. If you're a boxer, or a kickboxer, you learn certain skills in how to corner your opponent. In an octagon or a fenced-in enclosure, there are no corners, so you don't get that advantage that any one combat sport discipline might get.
Seems to be a bit of confusion.
First and foremost, it's all about athlete safety, and the UFC would never ever hold one of its events in a boxing ring because it's designed for boxing, not for mixed martial arts.
There seems to be a bit of confusion about what the octagon cage is actually made of. Is it wire?
It's made out of a very protective. It is made out of sort of a fenced material that is completely coated with a protective coating that does not in any way scratch an athlete when he or indeed she would be thrown up against it. It is designed to withhold the pressure of 250, 260 pound athletes being pushed into it. Whereas, boxing, the ropes in boxing rings are not designed for that.
Are the fighters allowed to hold on to the material of the wire cage while they're actually trying to control their opponent against the fence?
No, they are not. That is one of a set of 32 unified set of rules that are in place in all the jurisdictions where mixed martial arts and the UFC is regulated. And I think that's a very important point to mention. In boxing, you can sort of hang your arms around the ropes. We see that all the time. But in mixed martial arts, in a fenced-in enclosure like an octagon, you are not allowed to grasp the fence with either your hands or your feet.
Some callers to this program have said if you're actually doing mixed martial arts on a flat surface on the floor, so not raised up so that if anyone did move outside the perimeters, there would be a fall involved or some height involved. If it was on a flat surface on the floor, you actually don't need any sort of material to hold the fighters in anyway.
Well, in actual fact, you still do. If you look at freestyle wrestling as an Olympic sport, you can see that in many instances, during that competition, the wrestlers will end up going outside of the prescribed zone, and the wrestlers are then stopped. One of the things that makes for mixed martial arts to be exciting and to be high paced and high energy is that the athletes are enclosed in that fenced-in environment, and it allows for an even playing field, and it allows for consistent action and consistent play. So that the fitness levels of these athletes are tested as well as their martial arts skills.
Is cage fighting, if that's the right term for it, fighting within that enclosure?
Let me interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
It actually is not the right term for it. I mean, you don't talk about boxing as ring fighting. The sport is mixed martial arts, and it is conducted in a fenced-in ring or an octagon. It's like hockey. The sport is ice hockey, and it's played on a rink. The sport is cricket, and it's played on an oval. The sport is mixed martial arts, and it is not conducted in what we think. I mean, it's not cage fighting; it's mixed martial arts.
Okay, well, is UFC restricted from going anywhere else in the world because fighting is not allowed within that octagon enclosure?
No, we are not. Every place that we go to where the sport of mixed martial arts is regulated, it is regulated within an octagon enclosure.
Okay, so at this stage, you'll try to convince
the amazing thing is that it is already permitted in an octagon-type enclosure in Western Australia, but this move is actually regressive. It's actually taking it back into a boxing ring, which is just not safe for the athletes.
Okay,
it's not just the athletes that we're talking about here, Paul. It's the officials who can be thrown out with the athletes. It's the spectators, the judges, or other people media people that might be, sitting beside the octagon watching. You want to make sure that everyone is protected.
What's the UFC's record on serious injuries, Tom?
Well, we've held, over 19 years, we've held somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 bouts. And there has never been a serious injury. There's, people talk about, people are going in there trying to kill them. They're trying their deaths. It's never happened in the 19 years and the over 2,000 fights that we've ever had. Our safety record is impeccable. And part of the reason, the fundamental reason, is that we go to great lengths, not just through the octagon, to ensure that their athletes are ready for these competitions. We have pre- and post-fight medicals, that the referees are properly trained, that the judges are properly trained, that the matches are fair, that our matchmakers have ensured that we have equal competitors going against equal competitors. We have a very disciplined performance-enhancing drug testing protocol. This is a fast-growing and a sophisticated global sport that, we're actually under conversations with an International Mixed Martial Arts Federation to start work, and we already started work to make MMA an Olympic sport. And why not? 5 of the interdisciplinary combat sports that make up MMA are Olympic sports. You've got boxing, you've got karate, you've got judo, you've got Greco-Roman wrestling, you've got freestyle wrestling, and you've got taekwondo. They're Olympic sports already. What mixed martial arts is brings them all together into one very skilled discipline.
Okay, so at this stage, you'll be in Perth in 2 weeks' time, hoping to meet with the Premier and the Sports Minister to change their mind on this ban.
I'd love to have that opportunity, Paul, and when I'm in Perth, I'd love to come into your show and maybe take some calls from your listeners.
Okay, good to talk to you. Thanks a lot, Tom.
Thanks, Paul. Take care.